Let me back up and set the scene for you. If you're watching Karenology, you know that sometimes the craziest fights start over the smallest things. But this wasn't small at all. 3 in the morning, dead asleep in my own bed when I hear this metallic thunk, 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 like someone's hammering nails into wood. I roll over, figuring it's some neighbor fixing a loose board or something, but the sound keeps going. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I throw on my robe and shuffle to the front window, the streetlights casting this orange glow across my yard. And there she is. Woman in a navy business suit, hair pulled back tight, working methodically along my fence line with a heavy-duty staple gun. She's got this stack of papers in one hand, and she's mounting them to my fence posts like she's decorating for the world's worst block party. What the hell? I mutter, stepping out onto my porch. The cold night air hits my face, and I can smell the faint scent of fresh ink from whatever she's stapling up there. She doesn't even look up, just keeps working. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Mr. Coleman, she says, like we're having a casual conversation at the grocery store. These 47 parking violation notices have accumulated over the past month. You now owe the homeowner association $2,340. Payment is due in 72 hours, or we begin foreclosure proceedings. I'm standing there in my boxers and undershirt, watching this woman destroy my fence with paper, and I honestly think I'm dreaming. 47 violations? I look at my driveway. There's my 15-year-old Toyota Camry sitting exactly where I park it every single night. Same spot I've used for 15 years. You know, lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but... Beverly Harris, Homeowner Association Compliance Officer. She finally looks up, and her eyes are cold as winter glass. And this isn't a game, Mr. Coleman. These are legitimate violations of our updated parking regulations. Each photograph is time-stamped and GPS verified. She hands me a manila envelope thick as a phone book. The weight of it surprises me. Photographs? 47 of them. Your vehicle repeatedly violating the established parking boundaries. Each infraction carries a $50 fine, plus administrative costs. She clicks her staple gun one more time, securing the last notice to my offense. Have a good evening. Just like that, she's gone, walking back to her white sedan like she just delivered my mail. I'm left standing in my yard, holding this envelope, looking at my fence covered in papers like some kind of legal Christmas tree. Back inside, I dump the envelope on my kitchen table. The overhead light buzzes as I flip it on, casting harsh shadows across dozens of photos. And there's my Toyota. Same car, same driveway, but each photo has these red lines drawn on it. Digital markup showing my car extending past some invisible boundary by what looks like maybe 6 inches. 6 inches on my own driveway. I grab my reading glasses and look closer. Every photo shows the same thing. My car parked normally, but according to these red lines, I'm somehow blocking a public pedestrian thoroughfare, or exceeding designated parking parameters. The timestamps span the last month, some photos taken at 7 in the morning when I leave for my coffee run, others at 11 at night when I get back from visiting my daughter. Someone's been watching my house, photographing my car, on my own property. The violation notices are printed on official homeowner association letterhead, each one referencing specific code violations I've never heard of. Section 15C, Vehicle Encroachment Beyond Designated Boundaries. Section 22A, Obstruction of Emergency Access Routes. Emergency access routes, it's my driveway. I've lived in Maple Ridge Estates for 15 years, bought this house right after my divorce, raised my daughter here, know every neighbor by name. We've had our share of HOA drama, someone complaining about Christmas lights staying up too long, arguments over fence heights, the usual suburban nonsense. But this feels different. I pull out my phone and call the HOA office, goes straight to voicemail. You've reached Maple Ridge Estates Homeowner Association. Office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. For emergencies, please contact... I hang up. It's Tuesday night, or Wednesday morning now, I guess. But who sets up an emergency meeting at 3 a.m. to staple violation notices to someone's fence? Have you ever had that moment where you realize your quiet little life just got turned upside down? where you're standing in your kitchen in your underwear, looking at evidence that someone's been stalking your daily routine, and you just know, that tomorrow's going to be different than yesterday? That's where I was, holding 47 photos of my own car, in my own driveway, on my own property, and somehow I'm the criminal. I made coffee, strong coffee, because something told me the sleep wasn't coming back tonight, and I had a feeling I was going to need all the energy I could get. The first photo was dated exactly 31 days ago, the day after Beverly Harris was elected HOA president. 7 a.m. sharp, I'm standing outside the HOA office with my envelope of photos and a head full of questions. The building's one of those generic strip mall units sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a tax prep place. Beverly Harris's white sedan is already in the parking lot. The door chimes when I walk in. Beverly's behind the reception desk, same navy suit as last night, hair still pulled back like she's heading into battle. She doesn't look surprised to see me. Mr. Coleman, right on time. She glances at the wall clock. I assume you're here about your payment plan options. Payment plan? I set the envelope on her desk. I'm here because someone's been taking pictures of my car while I sleep, and I want to know why. She opens the envelope like she's reviewing a restaurant menu, completely calm. As I explained last night, these are documentation of your repeated violations of our updated parking ordinances. The board voted on these new regulations 6 weeks ago. What board meeting? I never got a notice. All residents receive proper notification via certified mail. She pulls out a thin folder and slides a receipt across the desk. Your signature, confirming delivery on September 1st. I look at the signature. It's mine, but I don't remember signing for anything like this. This was just the regular monthly newsletter. You buried new parking rules in the newsletter? Page 14, Section 7. Revised parking compliance standards, effective immediately. She retrieves the photos and fans them out like poker cards. Your vehicle extends beyond the newly established parking boundaries in every single image. Newly established by who? These are lines someone drew on a computer. Beverly reaches under her desk and produces a measuring tape and a can of white spray paint. The boundaries were physically marked 3 weeks ago. Perhaps you failed to notice. My blood pressure's climbing. You spray-painted lines in my driveway? On the public easement adjacent to your driveway. The first 6 feet of every driveway in Maple Ridge Estates is technically community property, maintained by the Association for Emergency Vehicle Access. She says this like she's explaining gravity to a child. Matter of fact, no emotion. At 6 feet, my driveway is only 12 feet wide total, which means your usable parking space is 6 feet by 20 feet. Your vehicle exceeds those dimensions when parked normally. She taps one of the photos. Here, you can see the rear bumper extends 4 inches past the allowable boundary. 4 inches, on property I've been paying taxes on for 15 years. This is insane. You can't just change the rules and then fine people retroactively. Beverly closes my folder and locks it in her desk drawer. The association has full authority to establish and enforce community standards. That authority was granted when you signed your purchase agreement and began paying monthly dues. Monthly dues I've paid on time for 15 years, which gives you access to community amenities and services, not exemption from community regulations. She stands up, smoothing her skirt. Now, regarding your payment, we accept certified checks, money orders, or automatic bank withdrawal. Cash payments require a 15% processing fee. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead. Outside, I can hear traffic picking up as people head to work. Normal people having normal Tuesday mornings, while I'm arguing with a woman who thinks she owns my driveway. What if I don't pay? Continued non-compliance results in escalating measures, additional fines, restriction of community privileges, and ultimately, foreclosure proceedings. She says this without blinking. We've placed a lien on your property as of this morning. The paperwork's already filed with the county. A lien on my house for parking my car in my own driveway. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, Mr. Coleman. The association has legal authority to protect property values and maintain community standards. Residents who refuse to comply threaten the investment of every homeowner in Maple Ridge Estates. My hands are shaking now, not from fear, from pure, concentrated anger. Lady, I've been living here since before you knew this place existed. I've never had a single complaint, never caused any problems, never missed a dues payment. And now you're telling me I can't park my car in my own driveway? You can park your car in your designated parking area, which is clearly marked according to association guidelines. She returns to her desk, picking up a stack of similar manila envelopes. Other residents are dealing with the same adjustments. You're not being singled out. Other residents. I look at the envelopes, each one labeled with an address I recognize, my neighbors, people I see walking their dogs, kids I watch grow up. How many people are you doing this to? Beverly Harris smiles for the first time since I walked in. It's not a pleasant smile. Everyone, Mr. Coleman. Every single resident who thinks the rules don't apply to them. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about parking violations or emergency access routes. This wasn't even about my car extending 4 inches past some imaginary line. This was about power, and Beverly Harris had just declared war on the entire neighborhood. That evening, I'm standing in my garage staring at my Toyota like it's evidence in a murder trial. The overhead light casts sharp shadows across the concrete floor, and I can smell motor oil and old cardboard boxes. I grab my measuring tape, the same yellow Stanley I've had for 20 years, and start checking dimensions. Bumper to bumper, 16 feet, 2 inches, width, 6 feet, 1 inch. Standard mid-size sedan. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, certainly nothing that screams community menace. I walk to the end of my driveway and look for these mysterious boundary lines Beverly mentioned. Takes me a minute to spot them, thin white spray paint marks along the edges of my driveway, barely visible unless you know what you're looking for. Fresh paint, still sharp against the asphalt. The lines create a rectangle exactly 6 feet wide and 20 feet deep. My car, parked normally in the center of my driveway, hangs over by exactly 4 inches at the rear. 4 inches that turn me into a criminal overnight. My neighbor Eric emerges from his garage across the street, toolbox in hand. Eric's a good guy, contractor, built half the custom decks in our neighborhood, always willing to lend tools or help move furniture. He sees me crouch by my driveway and walks over. "Jim, what are you doing out there with a tape measure?" I show him the spray paint lines. "You get any surprise visits from the HOA lately?" His face darkens. "Beverly Harris hit me yesterday morning. Said my work truck was too long for designated parking." He points to his driveway where a white Ford F-150 sits. "Been parking that truck there for 8 years. Never bothered anyone." "How much?" $1,600, 24 violations over the past month. Eric kicks at a loose piece of gravel. "Thing is, I measured my truck when I bought it. Fits in my driveway with room to spare. But according to her new lines, I'm over by maybe 6 inches. 6 inches, same as me." "You pay it?" "Hell no, but she filed a lien anyway. Got the paperwork yesterday." Eric opens his toolbox and pulls out a manila envelope identical to mine. "Jim, she's hitting everyone. The Chens got fined for their Honda. Sarah Martinez got dinged for her minivan. Even old Mrs. Peterson with that tiny Corolla." A pattern emerges. Beverly's not targeting specific people or specific violations. She's systematically fining every resident in Maple Ridge Estates for the same thing, exceeding parking boundaries that didn't exist 6 weeks ago. "Eric, how many houses we got in this development?" 112. He closes his toolbox. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Oh, depends. You thinking Beverly Harris just figured out how to squeeze $100,000 out of our neighbors?" Eric nods grimly. "At least, some of the bigger vehicles, the SUVs and trucks, they're getting hit harder than us. Tom Bradley with that Suburban, heard he got 58 violations. The math is simple and ugly. 112 houses, average 40 violations each at $50 per violation, plus administrative fees, processing costs, and late payment penalties. Beverly Harris just invented a goldmine." My phone buzzes. Text message from my daughter Katie. "Dad, got a weird call from some HOA lady asking about your compliance history. Told her to mind her own business. Everything okay?" My compliance history. Beverly's digging into my background now, calling my family. "Eric, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." "Shoot." "You ever hear any complaints about my car? Any neighbor mention parking problems, blocked views, anything like that?" He shakes his head. Jim, you're the most considerate neighbor on the block. You shovel Mrs. Peterson's sidewalk in winter. You kept the Martinez kids' baseball when it went over your fence instead of complaining. If anyone's got a problem with how you park your car, they're crazy. That's what I figured, but I needed to hear it from someone else. So what's this really about? Eric glances around, making sure we're alone. Come here, I want to show you something. He leads me to his garage and pulls out a folder thick with papers. Remember when Beverly got elected HOA president? Big campaign about bringing professional management standards to Maple Ridge? I remember. Beverly ran unopposed after our previous president moved to Florida. Seemed harmless enough. Former corporate compliance officer, talked about updating our community standards, bringing us into the 21st century. Look at this. Eric spreads out several documents. These are her campaign materials. Notice anything? I scan the papers. Professional letterhead, detailed proposals for community improvements, references to increasing property values through enhanced enforcement of community standards. She's been planning this, I realize. Gets better. Check out who she hired for the community consultation on updated parking regulations. Eric points to a signature on one of the contracts. Harris Construction and Consulting, LLC. The name clicks. Any relation? Her brother Dennis. Beverly hired her own brother's company to assess parking compliance needs and recommend enforcement solutions. $50,000 contract approved by emergency board vote while half the board was on vacation. $50,000 to tell us our driveways were 6 inches too wide. And now she's collecting fines to pay for the solution to the problem she created. Eric closes the folder. Jim, this isn't about parking, this is about money. And we just became her personal ATM machine. Standing in my driveway under the streetlights, looking at those thin white lines that turn my home into a source of revenue, I felt something shift inside me. You know that feeling when you realize you're not dealing with a misunderstanding or a bureaucratic mistake? When you realize you're dealing with someone who looked at your quiet neighborhood and saw dollar signs? Beverly Harris had made one critical error in her calculations. She assumed I'd just pay the fine and move on like everyone else. She was wrong. Thursday evening, 7:30 sharp. The Maple Ridge Community Center smells like burnt coffee and floor wax. Folding chairs arranged in rows, facing a fold-out table with 3 microphones. About 60 residents scattered around the room, most clutching their own manila envelopes. Beverly Harris sits at the center table, flanked by 2 other board members I barely recognize. Newer residents who moved in within the last couple years. She's got a laptop open, a stack of legal-looking documents, and that same cold expression she wore in her office. Thank you all for attending tonight's emergency community meeting, Beverly begins. We're here to address recent questions about our updated parking compliance program. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor for 20 years, raises her hand. Beverly, my Honda Civic is smaller than a shopping cart. How is it possible I have 31 parking violations? Scattered murmurs of agreement. I see the Martinez family in the back row, Tom Bradley with his Suburban, even the young Jason Miller, who just bought his first house 6 months ago. Mrs. Chen, vehicle size isn't relevant to boundary compliance. Your Honda exceeds the designated parking area by 3 inches on the driver's side in each documented violation. 3 inches on my own driveway? Beverly clicks her laptop. The overhead projector displays a photo of Mrs. Chen's driveway with those familiar red digital lines. As you can see, clear encroachment beyond the established parameters. Eric stands up from his seat near the front. Beverly, where exactly did these established parameters come from? Because I've lived here 8 years and never saw any parking boundaries until 3 weeks ago. The boundaries were established through professional consultation with Harris Construction and Consulting, following a comprehensive review of community safety requirements and emergency vehicle access needs. She says this without a hint of irony. Doesn't mention that Harris Construction is her brother's company. Tom Bradley's voice booms from the back of the room. Safety requirements? My Suburban's been parked in the same spot for 12 years. Never blocked emergency vehicles. Never bothered anybody. Now you're telling me I owe $4,000? $4,000. The number hits the room like a slap. People start whispering, checking their own violation totals. Mr. Bradley, larger vehicles present greater compliance challenges. Your Suburban exceeds designated boundaries by up to 14 inches. creating potential obstruction hazards. Potential obstruction of what? Tom's face is red now. It's my driveway. Beverly's voice remains steady, professional. Community driveways include public easements maintained for emergency access. The association has legal responsibility to ensure these access routes remain clear. That's when I stand up. The room gets quiet. Beverly, I've got a question about these easements you keep mentioning. Her eyes find mine. Yes, Mr. Coleman? Where exactly are the legal boundaries of these public easements documented? Because I'd like to review the actual property surveys that define where my private driveway ends and community property begins. A pause, just long enough for me to notice. Those documents are maintained in association files, available for review during normal business hours. Great, I'll stop by tomorrow morning. I stay standing. But while we're all here, maybe you could explain why residents weren't given advance notice of these new enforcement measures. 30-day grace period, warning notices, something to help people adjust. Beverly clicks her laptop again. All residents received proper notification via certified mail on September 1st. The monthly newsletter. Correct. Page 14, buried in the middle of routine updates about pool maintenance and holiday decorations. I pull out my own copy of the newsletter, folded and marked with yellow highlighter. 7 sentences about revised parking standards. No mention of $50 fines. No mention of immediate enforcement. No mention of liens or foreclosure. More murmuring. People checking their own newsletters. The information was provided according to association bylaws. Association bylaws that most residents have never seen, written in legal language most people can't understand. I look around the room. Show of hands, who here actually knew that signing their home purchase agreement gave the HOA authority to redefine their property lines and charge $50 fees for parking 4 inches over an invisible line? Not a single hand goes up. Beverly's composure cracks slightly. Mr. Coleman, this meeting is not a forum for challenging the legal authority of the association. These regulations were properly adopted and are being properly enforced. Properly enforced by a compliance officer who hired her own brother's company to create the problem she's now collecting fines to solve? The room goes dead silent. Beverly's face flushes. I resent the implication. It's not an implication, Beverly. It's a fact. Harris Construction and Consulting, $50,000 to assess parking compliance. Same last name as yours. Same address on the business registration. Eric stands up beside me. Jim's right. I looked it up. Dennis Harris, Beverly's brother, owns the consulting company that recommended these new parking boundaries. Now the murmurs turn angry, people connecting dots, realizing they've been played. Beverly slams her laptop shut. This meeting is concluded. Residents with specific questions about their individual compliance issues can schedule appointments during normal business hours. She starts packing her papers, but Tom Bradley's voice stops her cold. Lady, I've got a specific question right now. If these parking violations are so legitimate, why did you wait until after your brother got paid to start collecting fines? Beverly Harris doesn't answer. She just grabs her laptop and walks out the back door, leaving her 2 board members to face a room full of angry neighbors. That's when I knew we had her. Not legally, not yet, but psychologically. She ran because she couldn't answer Tom's question without admitting what everyone in that room already suspected. The whole thing was a scam. But knowing you're being scammed and proving it are 2 different things. And Beverly Harris had the law on her side, properly filed liens and association bylaws that gave her broad authority to enforce community standards. What she didn't have was legitimacy. And in a small community like Maple Ridge Estates, legitimacy matters more than legal authority. The real fight was just beginning. Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I'm back at the HOA office, but this time I'm not alone. Eric's with me, plus Tom Bradley and Mrs. Chen. We agreed to stick together. Harder for Beverly to dismiss a group than individuals. The office door is locked, sign taped to the window. Office temporarily closed for administrative review. Appointments available by phone request only. Convenient, Tom mutters. He's a big guy, works construction management, not easily intimidated, but even he looks frustrated. She's hiding. Eric tries the door handle anyway. Jim, you think she's actually in there? I cut my hands against the window glass. The interior's dark, but Beverly's white sedan is parked right out front. She's here, just doesn't want to face us. My phone rings. Unknown number. Mr. Coleman, this is Mark Stevens, City Code Enforcement. I received a complaint that you are operating an illegal business from your residential property. I need to schedule an inspection. I step away from the others. What kind of business? Unauthorized automotive repair services. The complaint indicates you're performing commercial vehicle maintenance in your driveway, violating residential zoning restrictions. Automotive repair services. Sir, I changed my own oil last weekend in my garage. That's not commercial activity. The complaint specifically mentions multiple vehicles, parts storage, and customer transactions. I need to verify compliance with municipal codes. In multiple vehicles, parts storage, customer transactions. Someone's feeding the city a story that has nothing to do with reality. When did you receive this complaint? This morning, approximately 8:15. 30 minutes ago, right after Beverly realized that we were coming back for answers. Mr. Stevens, I'm happy to schedule an inspection, but I want you to know this complaint is retaliation for challenging homeowner association fines. The timing isn't coincidental. Sir, I just investigate complaints. I don't get involved in HOA disputes. If fair enough, but when you do your inspection, I want documentation that this complaint was unfounded, because whoever filed it knows it's false. I hang up and rejoin the group. Beverly's escalating. She just called code enforcement on me. Mrs. Chen looks worried. Jim, what kind of trouble can they make? Depends how creative they want to get. False complaints, harassment, bureaucratic warfare. I look at Beverly's sedan, knowing she's probably watching us from inside. She's trying to isolate us, make this personal instead of community-wide. Eric pulls out his phone. My turn to make some calls. I know people at the county recorder's office. Let's see what other Harris construction contracts the HOA approved lately. While Eric works his connections, I walk around the building. Small strip mall, shared parking lot, dumpster area in back. Nothing unusual except for a stack of white spray paint cans behind the dumpster. Empty cans, same brand I saw Beverly use for marking parking boundaries. A lot of empty cans, more than you'd need for 112 driveways. Tom follows me to the dumpster. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Beverly's been busy. Look at this. I count the empty spray paint cans. 27 cans. You know how much area 27 cans of paint covers? Tom's a contractor. He does the math fast. Way more than parking lines. That's enough paint for... Hell, that's enough paint to mark every street in the development. Every street, not just driveways. Tom, when you drive through the neighborhood, do you pay attention to street parking? Cars parked on Maple Ridge Drive, Oak Street, any of the main roads? His eyes widen. You think she's expanding the program. I think Beverly Harris looked at our neighborhood and saw money everywhere. Driveway violations were just the beginning. We walk back to the others. Eric's off the phone, looking grim. Jim, you're not going to like this. Harris Construction has 3 other active contracts with the HOA. Traffic flow optimization study for $15,000. Community Aesthetics Compliance Review for $12,000, and something called Comprehensive Property Value Enhancement Assessment for $28,000. $55,000 in additional consulting fees, all payable to Beverly's brother. Let me guess, these studies recommend additional enforcement measures that generate more fines. Gets worse. I talked to my contact at the county. Beverly filed incorporation papers for Maple Ridge Property Management Services last month. She's setting up a separate company to handle compliance enforcement for multiple HOA communities. She's franchising the scam, taking her profitable parking violation scheme to other neighborhoods. Mrs. Chen sits down on the curb, looking defeated. So we pay the fines or lose our homes. Those are our options. No, I help her back to her feet. Those are the options Beverly wants us to think we have. But she made one mistake. What's that? She got greedy, started expanding before she had the first phase locked down. I point to the empty paint cans. If she's planning to hit street parking next, she needs approval from the city, not just the HOA. Street parking enforcement requires municipal authority. Tom catches on first. And if she's filing false code enforcement complaints, that's harassment, abuse of process. Plus, her brother's consulting contracts are clear conflict of interest. Board members can't approve payments to family businesses without disclosure and community vote. Eric nods. So we've got her on corruption, harassment, and overreach. But proving it still means lawyers, court filings, months of legal battles. Maybe, or maybe there's a simpler way. My phone buzzes. Text message from an unknown number. Stop causing trouble or face consequences. This is your only warning. Anonymous threats now. Beverly's really losing her composure. I show the text to the others. Mrs. Chen gasps. Tom's face goes red. Eric just shakes his head. Jim, she's making this personal. That changes things. Yeah, it does. I delete the text and pocket my phone. It means we've got her scared, and scared people make mistakes. Looking at that locked office door, knowing Beverly Harris was inside planning her next move, I felt something I hadn't felt since my Army days. The calm focus that comes right before a fight, you know you're going to win. Beverly wanted to turn our neighborhood into her personal revenue stream. She wanted to intimidate us with liens and lawyers and bureaucratic bullying. But she made one critical error. She threatened my home. And I hadn't spent 15 years building a life in Maple Ridge Estates to let some small-time scam artist take it away. The gloves were coming off. Saturday afternoon, I'm in my kitchen making coffee when my nephew Mark calls. Mark works for the county land records department. Good kid, sharp with research, knows how to dig through bureaucratic paperwork. Uncle Jim, you're not going to believe what I found. I put him on speaker while I pour my coffee. The afternoon light streams through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the table, where I've spread out Beverly's violation photos. Try me. Remember you asked me to look up the property boundaries for Maple Ridge Estates? Well, I pulled the original subdivision plats, the deed restrictions, the whole file. And, Uncle Jim, your house isn't in the HOA. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. What do you mean not in the HOA? The boundaries were redrawn in 1987 when they expanded Oak Street. Your lot, plus about 15 other properties on the north end of the development, got rezoned as unincorporated county land. You're technically outside the association's jurisdiction. I sit down hard. Mark, I've been paying HOA dues for 15 years. I know, that's the crazy part. You've been paying voluntarily. The HOA never had legal authority over your property. Voluntarily. 15 years of monthly dues, community meetings, compliance with HOA rules, and none of it was legally required. Are you absolutely certain about this? Uncle Jim, I've got the survey maps right in front of me. Your property line ends 15 feet short of the HOA boundary. According to county records, you're not subject to their covenants, their dues, or their enforcement authority. Beverly Harris has been collecting money from me for 15 years with no legal right to do it. More than that, she's been threatening foreclosure on a property she has no authority over. Mark, can you get me copies of these documents? Already printed them. I'll drop them off this evening. I hang up and stare at my kitchen table covered with Beverly's violation photos. 47 photos of my car parked on my own property, outside HOA jurisdiction, with fines totaling over $2,000. Fraudulent fines, every single one. My hands are shaking as I call Eric. Eric, drop whatever you're doing and get over here, and call Tom and Mrs. Chen. Tell them it's urgent. What's going on? I just found out Beverly Harris has been stealing from me for 15 years. An hour later, my living room is packed. Eric, Tom, Mrs. Chen, plus Sarah Martinez and her husband, Jason Miller, and about 6 other neighbors. Mark arrives with a manila envelope thick with county documents. He spreads the survey maps across my coffee table. Okay, everybody see this red line? That's the official HOA boundary according to county records, established in 1987. He traces the line with his finger. Jim's house, Mrs. Peterson's house, the Martinez property, and 14 other lots are outside that boundary. Sarah Martinez leans forward. Outside how? Anywhere from 15 feet to half an acre. When the county expanded Oak Street, they had to redraw the subdivision boundaries. These properties got moved to unincorporated county jurisdiction. Tom's studying the map. So the HOA has been collecting dues from 17 families who don't legally owe them? Worse than that. They've been enforcing rules, issuing fines, and filing liens on properties outside their authority. That's not just fraud, it's extortion. Mrs. Chen looks confused. But I signed HOA papers when I bought my house. So did I, Mark explains. But legal authority doesn't come from signing papers. It comes from property boundaries. If your lot isn't in the HOA jurisdiction, those papers don't mean anything. Eric's calculating numbers. 17 families, average $200 a month in dues, 15 years. Beverly's collected over $600,000 in unauthorized fees. $600,000, plus the recent violation fines from properties she had no authority to regulate. So what do we do? Sarah asks. I look around my living room at my neighbors, people who trusted the system, paid their bills, followed the rules, and got scammed for 15 years. We give Beverly Harris exactly what she deserves. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I'm back at the HOA office, but this time I'm not asking questions. This time I have answers. Beverly's white sedan is in the parking lot. The office door is unlocked, sign removed from the window. She's behind her desk, same navy suit, same cold expression. Mr. Coleman, I assume you're here about your payment. I sit down across from her desk and place Mark's envelope in front of her. Actually, Beverly, I'm here to talk about your payment. Excuse me? That's $612,000. That's how much you've collected in unauthorized dues from 17 properties over the past 15 years. I open the envelope and slide the county survey maps across her desk. These are official property records showing that my house, along with 16 others, is outside HOA jurisdiction, has been since 1987. Beverly's face goes pale. She picks up the survey map, studies it, sets it down. These records don't invalidate existing contractual obligations. What contractual obligations, Beverly? You can't enforce a contract on property you don't have authority over. That's not a contract violation, it's theft. She opens her laptop, starts typing, stalling for time. The association has continuously exercised authority over these properties for decades. Adverse possession, implied consent, established precedent. Adverse possession requires hostile occupation and exclusive control. You've been providing services in exchange for voluntary payments. That's not adverse possession. That's just business. I lean forward. Bad business, as it turns out. Beverly closes her laptop. What do you want, Mr. Coleman? That's full refund of all dues and fees collected from properties outside HOA jurisdiction, immediate removal of all liens, written acknowledgement that these properties are not subject to association authority. And if I refuse? I stand up, leaving the survey maps on her desk. Then I file complaints with the county prosecutor for theft by deception, the state attorney general for consumer fraud, and the IRS for tax evasion on unreported income. Her hands are shaking now. You can't prove intentional deception. Beverly, you hired your brother's company to create fake enforcement problems. You filed false code enforcement complaints. You sent anonymous threat messages. I walk to the door. A decent prosecutor could prove intentional deception in his sleep. Wait. I turn back. How do I know you won't file complaints anyway? You don't, but here's what I will promise. Keep this quiet, process the refunds, remove the liens, and stick to properties actually in your jurisdiction. Do that, and maybe this stays between us. Beverly Harris stares at me across her desk, realizing that her profitable little scam just turned into a liability that could send her to prison. I need time to review the documentation. You have 72 hours, same deadline you gave me. I left her sitting there with those county survey maps, probably wondering how a retired mechanic outsmarted her elaborate compliance scheme. But here's the thing about small-time con artists like Beverly Harris. They're great at intimidating honest people who trust the system. They're not so great when they run up against someone who's willing to fight back. And I was just getting started. Wednesday evening, 6:30 p.m. The Maple Ridge Community Center is packed tighter than I've ever seen it. Word spreads fast in a small neighborhood, especially when it involves money and justice. Beverly Harris sits at the front table, flanked by a nervous-looking lawyer in an expensive suit who keeps checking his phone. The manila envelope on the table contains her surrender documents, full refunds for all residents outside HOA jurisdiction, removal of all liens, written acknowledgement of the boundary errors, plus, something I hadn't expected, her resignation as HOA president effective immediately. But I'm not here to gloat. I'm here because Beverly Harris taught me something important about my own neighborhood, and my neighbors deserve to hear it. I stand up in front of the packed room. Before we talk about refunds and legal settlements, I want everyone to understand what really happened here. This wasn't just about parking violations or HOA dues. Beverly's lawyer whispers something in her ear. She shakes her head. Beverly Harris looked at our community and saw weakness. She saw people who trusted the system, who paid their bills without question, who followed rules even when those rules didn't make sense. I look around the room at faces I've known for years. She was counting on us to stay quiet, pay our fines, and accept her authority without challenge. Tom Bradley calls out from the back row. Well, she was wrong. She was wrong about me, but she was right about something else. I pause, making sure everyone's listening. Most of us did stay quiet, for weeks, for years in some cases. How many of you questioned those monthly dues before this started? How many of you read the fine print in your purchase agreements? How many of you actually knew what authority the HOA had over your property? Uncomfortable silence, because they all know the answer. Beverly Harris didn't create the system that allowed her to steal from us. She just exploited it. And if we don't change how we think about authority and accountability, someone else will come along and do it again. Mrs. Chin raises her hand. Jim, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop being passive. Stop assuming that official-sounding letters and professional letterhead mean someone has legitimate authority over our lives. I pull out my own copy of the HOA bylaws. 43 pages of legal language I'd never bothered to read until this week. These bylaws give the HOA president broad enforcement powers with minimal oversight. No mandatory community approval for new fines. No appeals process. No requirement to justify enforcement decisions. Eric stands up. So we change the bylaws. We change more than that. We change our attitude. We stop being the kind of community where someone like Beverly Harris can operate for 15 years without anyone asking hard questions. Beverly's lawyer stands up. Mr. Coleman, my client has agreed to the financial settlements and policy corrections you requested. She's prepared to sign the agreement tonight. Your client is prepared to sign because she knows the alternative is criminal prosecution. That's not accountability. That's damage control. The lawyer looks uncomfortable. Beverly finally speaks for the first time tonight. What do you want from me, Jim? The room goes quiet. Everyone knows this is the moment. I want you to tell these people the truth, not the legal version, not the corporate compliance version, the real truth about what you did and why you did it. Beverly stares at me for a long moment. Then she looks out at the room full of neighbors she'd been systematically robbing. I saw an opportunity, she says quietly. The HOA had broad enforcement powers and minimal oversight. Most residents never questioned dues or fines as long as the amounts were reasonable. And the boundary issue, I knew about the boundary issue when I ran for president. The room erupts in angry murmurs. Beverly raises her voice to continue. I thought I could generate enough revenue through compliance programs to fund major community improvements, pool renovations, playground upgrades, increase property values for everyone. By stealing from 17 families, Tom Bradley shouts. Beverly's composure finally cracks. It wasn't supposed to be stealing. It was supposed to be creative financing, using available resources to benefit the whole community. Available resources? Mrs. Chen's voice is shaking with anger. Those were our mortgage payments, our grocery money, our retirement savings. I know. Beverly looks down at her hands. I know, and I'm sorry. It got out of control. The consulting contracts with my brother, the expanded enforcement, the threats, none of that was supposed to happen. Eric calls out, but it did happen because you had power and no accountability. That's when it hits me. This isn't just about Beverly Harris. This is about power without accountability in every small system where people trust authority without question. Beverly, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign those settlement papers. You're going to resign from the HOA board, and you're going to help us rewrite the bylaws to make sure nobody can do this again. her lawyer objects. Mr. Coleman, that goes beyond... Beyond what? Beyond making sure she can't set up the same scam in another neighborhood next year? I look directly at Beverly. You want to avoid criminal charges? You want to move on with your life? Then help us fix the system you exploited. Beverly nods slowly. What do you need me to do? 3 months later, I'm standing in my driveway at sunset, watching my neighbors come home from work. Normal people having normal evenings in a neighborhood that looks exactly the same as before, but feels completely different. The new HOA bylaws require community votes for any enforcement action over $100, monthly financial reports published online, background checks for all board members, and written disclosure of any business relationships between board members and HOA contractors. Mrs. Chen waves from her driveway where her Honda Civic sits, parked exactly where it's always been parked. No violations, no fines, no harassment. Eric's work truck is in his driveway, same as always. Tom Bradley's Suburban takes up most of his driveway, same as it has for 12 years. Beverly Harris moved to another state. Her brother's consulting company dissolved. The HOA bank account that used to fund their schemes now pays for actual community improvements, playground equipment, street lighting, snow removal. But here's the thing that really changed. My neighbors ask questions now. They read the fine print, they show up at meetings. They don't just trust authority because it comes with official letterhead. Sometimes the best victory isn't destroying your enemy. Sometimes it's teaching your community that they don't need to have enemies in the first place. I park my Toyota in the center of my driveway, same as always. 16 feet, 2 inches of perfectly legal parking in my own space, on my own property, that nobody has the authority to regulate except me. And every morning, when I back out of that driveway, I remember that the most important lesson Beverly Harris taught me wasn't about HOA bylaws or property boundaries. It was about the difference between having power over people and having people who refuse to be powerless. You know what's funny? I never did get around to painting over those white boundary lines Beverly spray painted on my driveway. I kept them as a reminder. Some lessons are too valuable to erase.